area of Montreal's Trudeau Airport, which is particularly quiet at the height of summer.
I think the most consistent thing is that the Canadians have not forgiven Mr. Trump.
And one of the most visible signs, Canadians are staying away.
Florida's $37 billion self-inflicted tourism crisis finals seamless script. Florida's leaders just made the costliest political blunder in the state's history. Not from a hurricane, not from a pandemic, but from their own arrogance. They chased away the very people who kept Florida alive during the winter. Canadian visitors who spend over $33,000 per household every season. And in the process, they burned through nearly $37 billion in lost economic activity. Picture it: empty condos, shuttered storefronts, restaurants without their loyal snowbird crowds. This wasn't an act of nature. It was a man-made disaster. And if you think this story is only about Florida's beaches and theme parks, you're wrong. Because when politics kills paradise, the damage doesn't stop at the state line. Let me ask you something. If you ran a business and your best customers spent more than anyone else, if they came back every year, filled your books in the slow season, and told their friends to do the same, would you insult them? Would you threaten them? Would you make them feel unwelcome? Of course not. Loyalty is priceless. The regulars who never miss a season, who keep your tables full when everyone else stays home, those are the customers you protect at all costs. And yet, that's exactly what Florida's politicians did. They treated Canadian snowbirds the backbone of their winter economy, not as valued partners, but as targets. Instead of rolling out a red carpet, they rolled out hostility. And the result wasn't just bad PR, it was catastrophic. Here's what most people miss about Florida's economy. It isn't powered only by theme parks and beaches. It runs on routine on people who return not for a week, but for a season. Canadian visitors are Florida's quiet advantage, its secret weapon. They don't blow in for 5 hurried days and vanish. They arrive with the first cold fronts, settle in, and keep settling in throughout the winter, bringing stability when tourism should be slowing down. On average, they spend $33,000 per household, per season. Not in a single splurge, but in steady, predictable purchases that keep local life moving. They fill grocery carts on Tuesday mornings. They linger in neighborhood restaurants on weeknights. They shop at local stores that would otherwise struggle between holidays. And because they stay, they become part of the rhythm. The familiar faces servers recognize, the customers small businesses plan around, the winter crowd that keeps entire communities alive when the sidewalks thin out. These aren't drive-by vacationers. They are seasonal residents whose spending lands where it matters close to home over and over again. But then, politics barged in. It started when President Trump casually called Canada the 51st state and slapped the country with heavy tariffs. To American ears, it might have sounded like tough negotiating. To Canadians, it felt like humiliation, an insult wrapped in policy. And here's where it got even worse. The frustration wasn't just aimed at Trump himself. It metastasized into something larger. Canadians began to feel it wasn't one man's arrogance, it was America's disregard for their country as a whole. And when resentment spread across the border, Florida found itself caught in the crossfire. Because Florida isn't just palm trees and theme parks. To international travelers, it is America. Its beaches, its condos, its resorts, symbols of the very country that had just dismissed their prime minister and gouged their exports. The anger translated quickly into choices. Flights weren't booked. Winter rentals sat empty. Families who once fled the snow for sunshine decided, in protest, that their dollars would stay home or go somewhere else. The backlash wasn't abstract. It had a body count in bookings. The result was swift and brutal, an 80% drop in Canadian tourists, according to Congressman Jared Moskowitz. That isn't a soft season, that's a collapse. And behind that number is a business owner watching months of revenue vanish in days. Richard Cleet, who owns hotels in Hollywood, Florida, saw it unfold in real time. The winter crowd he relied on the loyal snowbirds who arrived like clockwork simply didn't show. Many of his Canadian guests told him they were dissatisfied with how Trump spoke about their prime minister, and they were voting with their wallets boycotting the US. His Canadian bookings fell by 50% compared to the previous winter. These aren't just figures on a spreadsheet. They're empty rooms that don't pay housekeepers, quiet lobbies that don't justify front desk shifts, unserved dinners that never tip a server trying to make rent. When a market sours at the border, it drains out on Main Street. And yet, just as businesses were cutting hours and counting losses, the story took an even stranger turn. While the Canadian pipeline was drying up, Florida's politicians stared at the wreckage and chose to swing a wrecking ball at the state's own tourism engine. The Florida House of Representatives moved to eliminate all 62 tourist development councils across the state. If you're not familiar, these councils are the state's tourism sales force. They don't live on income taxes. They use hotel bed taxes to keep Florida on the world's radar funding marketing campaigns, beach restoration, attracting sports events and conventions, and stitching together all the reasons people choose Florida over 100 other sunny options. Killing them isn't belt tightening, it's amputation. Picture a national brand firing its entire marketing department and then wondering why no one hears about the new product. That's not prudence, that's economic suicide, dressed up as fiscal responsibility. Because tourism isn't automatic. Reputation decays, competitors advertise, travelers forget. Those councils exist to make sure Florida isn't just beautiful but visible. Take them away in the middle of a boycott, and you aren't fixing a budget line, you're pulling the plug on the engine that pays that budget in the first place. Here's the bill they were ready to hand the state. Those tourist development councils help channel nearly $2 billion each year from hotel bed taxes. Shut them down, and you don't just dim a few billboards, you pull $37 billion out of Florida's economy and erase $22.5 billion in wages for Florida workers. According to the analysis cited, read that again. Take away the team that attracts visitors, and the ripple wipes out tens of billions that pay bartenders, housekeepers, line cooks, shuttle drivers, vendors, the entire lattice of people who make vacations possible. And for what? To hand residents a $60 property tax break. That's not reform. That's a trade you only make if you've never run a balance sheet. It's like tearing the roof off your house to save a few dollars on air conditioning until the next storm comes and everything is ruined. Numbers, this lopsided, don't need flourish. They indict themselves. You can call it efficiency, you can call it accountability, but when the ledger closes, the arithmetic spells the same word, loss. Not theoretical, not someday immediate. Because when marketing stops, demand slides. When demand slides, hours vanish. And when hours vanish, paychecks shrink. Which is why the people closest to the ground, the ones whose livelihoods depend on full rooms and full dining rooms, sounded the alarm, loudly. Robert Scrow, executive director of Destinations Florida, called the plan what it was: economic sabotage. Eliminate tourism promotion, he warned, and you're gambling with the livelihoods of more than 2 million Floridians. We're not talking about C-suite bonuses. We're talking about hotel housekeepers whose hours rise and fall with occupancy, restaurant servers who depend on full dining rooms, shuttle drivers, line cooks, front desk clerks, and small shop owners who survive on the steady cadence of snowbirds returning each winter. Destinations don't market themselves, and families don't feed themselves on promises. Strip away the engine that brings customers through the door, and the rest of the machine seizes. Meanwhile, officials reached for talking points, numbers that sounded encouraging, until you looked under the hood. At the 2025 Florida Governor's Conference on Tourism, Governor Ron DeSantis proudly announced that Florida welcomed 34.4 million visitors in the second quarter. On paper, it sounded impressive, but buried inside that number was a crack. Only 640,000 Canadians came down 20% from the year before. To the podium, it was just a dip. To communities built around Canadian snowbirds, it was a hole in the floor. Then came the spin. Brian Griffin, the new president and CEO of Visit Florida, pointed to growth from other places, including Brazil. But here's the flaw. Not all visitors are created equal. A week-long tourist from Sao Paulo doesn't behave like a winter resident from Toronto. Canadians stay months, buy groceries weekly, visit the same golf courses, pay for utilities, fill prescriptions, become part of local rhythms. That kind of spending isn't replaced by a handful of short-stay vacationers hopping between resorts. And the broader cross-border picture was breaking the same way. Canadian car visits to the US plummeted 34% in August 2025, according to Forbes. Swap long-term, high-value snowbirds for quick-stop vacationers, and the ledger bleeds. You don't need spreadsheets to see it. The evidence was already etched across Florida's streets. In Fort Myers Beach, blocks that once buzzed with winter crowds now show a harsher picture. Boarded-up shops, darkened windows, handwritten signs that read "closed until further notice." The soundtrack isn't laughter or clinking glasses, it's silence rolling down empty sidewalks. Head to Clearwater, and the signs are even more literal. For sale placards dot properties that were once fully booked by Canadian families escaping the snow. Condos that used to host repeat renters now sit still, waiting, their balconies staring out at seas no one is paying to enjoy. These aren't abstract metrics. They are visual proof, tangible scars that show how quickly a tourism economy can unravel when loyalty is severed and marketing is strangled. Because when regulars stop coming, businesses don't just lose transactions, they lose relationships. And once that pulse fades, it isn't easily revived. Tourism is not a guaranteed inheritance. It's a contest, and the moment you stop competing, someone else takes your place. Every sunny destination in the hemisphere is chasing the same dollars Florida once took for granted. Mexico pours millions into advertising its beaches as both cheaper and friendlier. The Caribbean rolls out all-inclusive packages with no political baggage attached. Even other U.S. states, Texas, California, Arizona, are courting travelers with aggressive marketing campaigns, sports events, and cultural showcases. This is the cruel truth. Tourists have choices. They don't just need warmth. They need a reason to pick your warmth. For decades, Florida understood that. It invested, promoted, and stayed at the top. That's how it became a powerhouse. But when lawmakers strip away the very councils tasked with selling Florida to the world, they open the door for rivals to swoop in. And rivals don't wait. They seize opportunity. As one industry expert put it, if you destroy the TDT, you destroy Florida's ability to compete. Here's what makes the whole story almost unbelievable. Florida was winning. In 2024, the state welcomed 142.9 million visitors, up 1.6% from 2023. Tourism generated over $150 billion in economic impact and supported 2.1 million jobs. By any measure, Florida wasn't just holding steady, it was breaking records. And yet, even at the height of success, politicians were prepared to gamble it all away. Instead of protecting the machine that fed small towns, filled hotels, and kept 2 million paychecks flowing, they chose to score points by slashing the very infrastructure that made the growth possible. Think about that contradiction. The beaches are still beautiful, the Everglades still wild. Disney hasn't gone anywhere. The system was functioning, but perception is fragile, and trust is fragile. Alienate your biggest customers while dismantling the marketing that brings them back. And you're not managing prosperity, you're dismantling it. The numbers confirmed what business owners already felt in their bones. According to Tourism Economics, Canadian visitation to Florida was down 25.2% year over year as of August 2025. That isn't a blip, that's a trend line bending downward. And here's the part every tourism executive dreads. Once trust is broken, it takes years, sometimes decades to rebuild. Travelers aren't just buying a plane ticket. They're buying a sense of welcome, a sense of belonging. Lose that, and even when the beaches are still beautiful, the perception lingers. Maybe it's better to go somewhere else. Many Canadians did just that. Some booked Brazil, others chose European trips. Many stayed closer to home, keeping their vacation dollars inside Canada. Each diverted trip meant not just lost revenue, but lost loyalty. Carol Dover, president and CEO of the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association, put it bluntly. Even the best management cannot overcome political decisions that systematically drive customers away. This isn't just a Florida cautionary tale, it's a blueprint for what not to do. Other states prove you can attract visitors without insulting entire countries or dismantling your own promotional engine. Texas draws millions of travelers every year without turning tourism into a political weapon. California welcomes international visitors by safeguarding the infrastructure that sells its story museums, national parks, coastal drives, while keeping the marketing lights on. They protect the machine, so the machine keeps paying families. Florida's leaders, by contrast, chose ideology over economics. They treated tourism like a scoreboard for political theater, rather than the lifeline it is for small businesses and workers. And the irony is thick. The state brands itself the free state of Florida. Yet the rhetoric and policy posture made swathes of visitors feel distinctly unwelcome. Officials love to tout world-class amenities, unique natural and historical sites, and family-oriented opportunities. But the message and the math don't match if your biggest customers hear one thing in the brochure and another from the podium. You can't sell hospitality while projecting hostility. So now the questions that really matter. Will Canadian snowbirds return in anything close to their old numbers, or has the trust already slipped too far to reel back? Can Florida realistically replace billions in long-stay, high-value spending with short bursts from elsewhere? Will travelers in Europe, Brazil, and beyond look at how Canada was treated and quietly choose a different beach, a different winter? And inside the State House, will leaders learn from this, or double down on the theater that started the damage? Florida still has the beaches, the Everglades, the magic. But tourism runs on trust, and trust has a memory. What do you think Florida should do now to fix this? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into where politics collides with everyday economics, hit subscribe, because this story is bigger than one state, and it's far from over.